Hey, this is Dave Hompes and I'm here to teach you a little bit about the reasons why we use comprehensive stool testing that we run, a little bit of detail about the test itself, why it's superior to a lot of the other testing that's out there at the moment and how you can benefit from it. Before we get started, if you have any unexplained symptoms, any chronic symptoms that relate to your energy levels, to your skin, to your mood, to your sleep, to your digestive system, then I highly recommend that you take a really good look at the details of this testing because I think it could benefit you really significantly. Now, the comprehensive stool testing that I've run for the last 3 years with my clients, to be honest, most doctors don't know about this testing. The labs that we use do have a lot of doctors registered, but it's just a drop in the ocean in terms of the number of doctors who are actually practicing medicine. It's my hope that over a period of the forthcoming years, we get more and more doctors to start to use these tests because they are superior to the testing methods that are currently being used in the most part to identify digestive difficulties. Now, just want to make it clear before we start that the testing that we use cannot identify more serious and more advanced diseases. You know, there are things that the doctors can do in the hospitals with scans and ultrasounds and putting a camera down your throat or into your colon that can identify structural abnormalities, tumour growth and serious damage. So we're not saying that this testing replaces that at all. However, the type of testing that we run looks at things on a more subclinical level, on a more chronic level, and it looks for the root causes of some of those more serious and sinister problems that the doctors are able to look for. Now, we use it's really cutting edge technology here. We're actually in a position where the labs that we use can analyze for the DNA of the organisms themselves. We're actually able to look for the DNA of the organisms rather than having to find intact or whole parasites or parts of them, bacteria, yeast and fungal organisms and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very sensitive test. And when I started using this test, I started to find things that I'd never seen before, even using some of the other advanced testing that is available out there. Now, it has a couple of real major advantages. The first advantage, in my opinion, is that you can run this testing from the comfort of your own home, the privacy of your own home, without having to go anywhere. The second major benefit is that we're actually looking for the root cause of problems within your digestive system. So if you have ulcers or you have damage to the digestive system, this test is able to give us indications as to why that damage is happening. So it's not good enough just to try and work on repairing the damage using medical intervention or even nutritional or herbal intervention. If we don't get rid of whatever is irritating your gut, in your gut lining, then we're going to struggle to help you feel better. So we're actually looking at some of the root causes of these problems. So let's take a look at what the test actually looks at. Well, we get either a 2-page or a 4-page report depending on the level of test that you want to look at. If you go for the 2-page report, then you basically end up with a profile where we're able to look for harmful or pathogenic or opportunistic bacteria species. You may have heard of some of these. You may have heard of Clostridium difficile. You've obviously heard of H. pylori because you probably found my website via H. pylori by having it or researching it. How many of you have heard of Salmonella? There are other ones called Klebsiella, Campylobacter, Vibrio, Yersinia, etc. So we can see lots and lots of different bacteria that probably shouldn't be there. And if they are there and you have symptoms, there's a good chance that they are contributing, if not totally causing those symptoms. We're also able to look for many, many different parasites. Some of the parasites are very tiny, they're protozoan parasites. Perhaps you've heard of things like Cryptosporidium. In about 1992-93, there was a huge outbreak of Cryptosporidium in the municipal water supplies in Milwaukee. It killed a lot of people, and there's probably a lot of people around Milwaukee in Wisconsin now carrying chronic infections of Cryptosporidium around as a result of that problem, even though it was sort of 15, 20 years ago now. Blastocystis hominis, which is a parasite I had. Giardia lamblia, which is another very common parasite, causes things like diarrhea and bloating and can cause typical IBS symptoms and fatigue. We have some of the worms as well. So as well as the microscopic parasites, we find things like hookworm, which is Necator americanus. We find whipworm in some people, which is Trichuris trichiura. We find pinworm, which is typically considered a childhood problem, but we do see it in a lot of adults as well, and it's been implicated in things like appendicitis and appendix disease. And we also see threadworm, which is a nasty one called strongyloids. And that's a really important one because in the medical literature, it clearly states that strongyloids is often misdiagnosed as peptic ulcer disease. And we also know that peptic ulcer disease is usually caused by H. pylori, right? So we have a lot of people come along who think they have H. pylori. Turns out that they actually have strongyloids. Now, giving them antacid medications and using triple therapy is not going to get rid of the strongyloids. It needs a completely different approach. So that's where the testing comes into its own. We're able to identify exactly what's going on so that you can choose the right treatment option, okay? The one that's going to suit you best, the one that's going to help you recover fastest. We also find a lot of yeast and fungal overgrowth, particularly with organisms such as Candida, which you may have heard of. These are opportunistic yeast and fungal organisms that overgrow if your immune system is suppressed, if you don't have enough digestive juices, if you don't have enough stomach acid and digestive enzymes, and if you don't have enough levels of good bacteria. Speaking of good bacteria, on page 1 of this report, we get a very good, solid, accurate indication of the levels of your good bacteria. Do you have very low levels of good bacteria, in which case you are more prone to and more open to these other bugs growing? Or do you have good levels of bacteria? What's the balance like? Because that will give us great information on exactly the right supplements for you to take in order to pull those good bacteria up if you need them. And you could take a probiotic supplement that you think is doing you good, but if the balance of bacteria if you have a specific imbalance, the supplements that you may use might make that imbalance worse, okay? So again, huge advantage of using this test. Now, the most comprehensive test we have basically covers not only the digestive infections, the yeast and fungal overgrowth, the bacteria, etc., but we also get a really strong indication of how your digestive function is working on a grand scale. So we're not just interested in what's there that shouldn't be, we're also interested in seeing perhaps how much damage it's done, how much damage you've done to yourself, maybe drinking alcohol or eating foods that have been damaging your digestive tract as well. So we get an indication of how strong your immune function is. That's very important because if you have bugs living in there that shouldn't be, simply getting rid of the bugs might not be enough, because if you don't strengthen your immune system, the next thing that gets into your system, into your body, will probably just get there and start causing similar or the same problems. We get an indication of gluten sensitivity, which is a major cause of digestive symptoms in people. Gluten is in wheat, rye, barley, and some other grains, and it can create an inflammatory response within your intestine that can lead to very similar symptoms as H. pylori and other digestive bugs. We get an indication of whether you have an inflammatory response going on down in your lower part of the digestive system. That can be indicating things like inflammatory bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, etc. Even if it's on a very low level, the test is very sensitive at picking those up. And it can tell us how well you're digesting and absorbing your fats and proteins. It can tell us whether you have enough digestive enzymes going into the intestines in order to break down your food properly, all of which are very important, because if those parameters are not working properly, there's going to be more food for the bugs to eat and less food getting into your body. And obviously you don't want the bugs taking the food that you're eating. Now, all this can be looked at and examined in a single stool sample. A lot of the conventional testing requires more than one sample, because if you're looking for things like parasites, they don't necessarily come out with every bowel movement. However, because we're using technology that looks at the organism's DNA, rather than relying on finding the whole entire intact bugs or fragments of those bugs, we only need a single sample. And as I said earlier in the video, I found organisms that I'd never seen before in a lot of the other testing, even though that testing was considered by many doctors to be superior even to the medical testing. So we have a hierarchy of different testing levels there, and the testing we use, I believe, is the very best, very finest testing in the world. Now, these tests are available in North America, they're available in the UK and Europe, they're available in Australia and New Zealand. So if you'd like to order a test, please follow the appropriate links on this website. They're everywhere. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to find them with flashing red arrows and things like that. If you want to get yourself tested, have a look at the information. Don't delay, because this could speed up your recovery by months and months. So I really hope it helps you. Now, just a very quick word in terms of the kinds of test kit that you would receive. When you order a test, the test just comes in a little box like this. You open up the box and you'll find that there are some bags that you can mail the sample back to the lab with. There is a collection kit. You have some test tubes and some vials in which you put the stool sample, and you just fill in the forms, follow the instructions, pop everything back in the box. The box goes in a mailer. You close the box and off it goes to the lab to be analysed. It usually takes about 3 to 4 days from the point that you place your order to receive the kit. We have distributors in Australia and in New Zealand. We have distributors in the UK, and the lab kits, the tests themselves, get returned by FedEx overnight to the lab in America, in Washington DC, in fact, and they analyse the test kits. And usually you'll tend to wait 2 to 3 weeks, and then the results will come back to me. When the results come back to me, we email you so that we can have a 45 to 60-minute personal consultation where we can interpret the results for you and make the necessary recommendations to get you moving back towards where you want to be in terms of your health. So I hope you found this video interesting and informative. If you need anything, please do not delay in contacting us. Our contact details are at the bottom of this webpage. You'll see an email address and a phone number, and we look forward to hearing from you.